First time I met Ed Van Halen, I was getting ready to go on stage, opening for his band, and he's standing in my pit with Valerie right next to him and Wolfie in her arms, and he's got his guitar on, and he's like just running scales, and he's like, "Hey dude, what's up?" And I'm like, "Fuck, are you fucking kidding me?" Eddie Van Halen standing there with Valerie Bertinelli and Wolfie, and he's in my pit, and I'm opening for his band, and I was so fucking nervous. So I came over and said hi to him, and he's like, "Oh man, you're gonna be fine." And I think it was probably the worst show I ever played in my life because I could not stop thinking he's right there, you know. So I just couldn't focus, and I couldn't wait till the gig was over. And then after that, I was fine. But that first gig was nerve-wracking because I just could not get out of my head that Eddie Van Halen is looking at me, and we're playing in front of Van Halen, and you know, but we ended up being really good friends, and they kept asking us to do more and more legs, and I think we ended up spending maybe 6 months with those guys. We did a leg, and they're like, "Hey, do another one. Hey, do another one," you know. And Sammy was really cool too, you know. He's another friend that I made from that era. So both of those guys, you know, there's a connection that I have with those two guys, and everybody in the band does. But as a guitar player, you know, anytime Ed would come to Seattle, he'd come pick me up, and we'd go to a pool hall and play pool, or we'd go see a band, or we'd just end up in his hotel room playing guitar all night, you know, getting drunk and playing guitars and stuff, you know, playing like Name That Riff, you know, play a couple of, you know, Zeppelin, AC/DC, like Journey, like it's kind of going back and forth, you know. On that tour, he had, you know, he had the 5150 heads, the PDs that he had kind of made, and he had the Music Man guitars, the Eddie Van Halen, the EVH Music Mans, which he had just kind of designed and kind of were out. And I was like, "Man, I'd really like to have one of those. Man, you think you can give me a good price on one of those?" And he's like, "Fuck that, dude. I'll just give you a guitar." It's like now that it's like everybody gives me everything for free now when I can totally afford it. When I couldn't afford it, nobody would give me anything. So let me do that for you. I'll give you a guitar. I remember coming home off that tour, and I was living with Kelly Curtis and his wife Peggy, and I was living down in the basement. Not sure if Eddie Vedder was there with me yet. He moved in down there for a little while too. We were both living in the basement of our manager. He comes out, and I think it was I remember it was a nice sunny day, and he's like, "Hey man, welcome home, man. You have a good tour?" It's like, "Man, well now you can relax. Hey, by the way, you think you could clear your shit out of my garage? I'll need to put my car in there." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Eddie Van Halen filled the garage with gear for you. I haven't been able to park my car in my garage for months." I'm like, "Are you, what?" He's like, he hits the clicker and it goes up, and it's just like a scene from a movie. Like the whole thing is filled with like, you know, cardboard boxes, 2 full stacks, so 4 cabs, 2 heads, a couple of guitars, you know, and it's in a tiny packed garage anyway. So it's like just sitting there in the middle, and I'm just trying to process this. Like, okay, Eddie Van Halen just filled my garage with gear, and so I'm opening all this stuff out, and I still have those 2 guitars. Interesting story. I just got back I think it was last year or the year before. I was recording Degradation Ship over at Hanson, which used to be A&M, I think at the time. And Eddie gave me a gold top Music Man and a trans blue, so you could see the wood grain, you know? So I had 2 of them, right? Two EVHs and then 2 full stacks of the 5150s. And I still have those too. But I was recording Degradation Ship, and that guitar went missing in that session. And I just never knew what happened to that guitar. And I tried to track it down for years, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then in the middle, or at the beginning of probably the Rainier Fog tour, I got a call out of the blue from Dave Friedman, who designed the double J amps that we put out together. And he's like, "Man, I got a guy in Florida who's like a guitar collector, and he collects those EVHs. And I think he found your guitar." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, he reached out to me because he knows we work together." And so I called him up. This guy named Tom Brino in Florida, and he collects those EVHs. And he'd found online that it had finally popped up after like 18 years of being missing or whatever. And he's like, that's Cantrell's guitar. There was only, they were artist guitars, and I think they only made like 23 or 26 of each one of those, and they just went to artists. So they were just kind of gifts from Ernie Ball and Eddie to people, you know? And mine in particular, I had them routed out so that I could pull the Floyd. So I had them route that out. So out of those 23 guitars, that mine are the only two that have that rear route, I think. And he's like, yeah, that's your guitar. And he showed me the site, and sure as shit it was. But I could, you know, could tell it was mine. And we tried to set up a sting with the dude to get it back, and he kind of went dark on us. And then I'm like, great, I gotta get this close to getting that guitar back, which means the world to me because I got it from Eddie, you know? And about a week later, another guy calls from San Diego, Greg Dorset, another collector. And he's like, dude, I got your guitar. He's like, this kid wants to sell me your guitar for like $7,000. And I was asking him about where he got it. And he said his dad used to work at A&M Studios, or his dad or his uncle or something like that. So it had basically stayed underneath the bed till he gave it to the young kid. Now the kid was like 21 years old. And he wants to sell the guitar and make some money off it. So Tom bought the guitar for like $7,000 or whatever, and then just drove it up from San Diego and gave it to me. He's like, I don't even want you to pay me back, man. This is your guitar and you should have it. Then I call Ed and I tell him the story. He's like, you remember those guitar that went missing I told you, that gold top that you gave me? Yeah, man. It's like, I got that back, man. He's like, are you kidding me, man? I'm like, yeah, 18 years later, I got it back, man. Like 2 separate guys, one guy in Florida, one guy in San Diego, within a period of about a month, tracked it down and got it back to me. And he's like, I'm really happy for you, man, but why the fuck doesn't that ever happen to me, man? I never get my shit back. All my stolen stuff stays missing. I'm like, well, it's because it's Eddie Van Halen. Shit, dude, I wouldn't give it back either. Yeah, I guess you're right. Pretty funny.